I must rise above the flames.
Welcome back, Flick Knaves. I'm Lupinefiasco, this is Daily FaB Gameplay, and today we are playing Cindra, Dracai of Retribution. For anyone who is new to the channel, welcome to the Empire. What we do here is review replays of games I played on the Talishar.net client days or weeks ago, after enough time has passed that I lose my bias and can more objectively judge the quality of my games. I will talk through turn cycles as if I were taking them now, giving my thought process for the lines I would take, and comparing those to the lines I did take at the time of recording. We either learn from my mistakes or reinforce good play patterns with the overall goal of tightening and optimizing our gameplay in the future to take down paper events and walk away with that shiny, shiny cardboard. If you like what you see and would like to try this deck for yourself on Talishar, there is a FaB deck link in the video description below. While you're down there, if you haven't already done so, please consider subscribing to my YouTube channel. It is the best free way to support me and to make sure that you see every new episode of Daily FaB Gameplay in your YouTube feed. I also have a Blue Sky, a Discord, and a Patreon, links to which are in the video description. Patrons at the Arc Lightning tier or higher will get access to all of my matchup guides for all of my deck lists forever, including this one. Now, without further ado, let's jump right into the gameplay. All this week, I'm going to be queuing up with Yuki Lee Bender's Exact 80 from the Calling Memphis. The link to this deck is available in the video description. Any sideboard choices are my own, but I will be buying Yuki's sideboard guide once she releases it, and I will link the link to her Patreon in the video description as well, so that you can all go out and buy the guide. If for no other reason, let's reward very good deck building. This deck slaps. It's very good. I don't believe that this is the end of Cindra deck building. This is a week 1 list that, at a bare minimum, didn't need to account for the Cindra mirror. We saw Jacob Baugh playing a similar list in the Memphis Battle Hardened, so clearly some other deck builders found their way to Redline Cindra, but obviously the amount of players playing this deck has skyrocketed since Saturday, and teching for the mirror is going to be very important. So deck building doesn't end here. I am likely not deviating too far from my list that has 12 blues currently, but I will be incorporating card choices from this list, and just like I played Vero's Count Your Blessings Jarl to inform my own Jarl build, I'll be doing the same with Yuki's Cindra list. So against Azalea, I won the die roll. I chose to go second. That's kind of hit or miss, right? Azalea can high roll with Knock the Death Whistle to find red in the ledger and play red on turn 0, and our armor, as you may notice from either watching Cindra play or trying it yourself, doesn't really block. We have 1 point of block value on Flight Path, and at no other point, unless we're going to die, do we want to block with our Mask, Vest, or Flick Knives. So this is a risk, but Azalea doesn't have too many hits in her deck for that turn 0 spike. Knock the Death Whistle, red in the ledger, maybe Sleep Dart, or ways to hamstring us, but outside of that, Azalea is just pushing damage, and if she isn't dominating an arrow, then we can just block. Unlike Aurora, who has 20 plus non-blocks in her deck, all of Cindra's cards block, and many of them block for 3. So it isn't really all that bad if we have to put 10 in front of an arrow here. I mean, we can block 9 from hand, which will be enough to cover a regular arrow and still, preserve life total. Azalea goes for the blind flip, does not manage to hit. If that Sleep Dart had come in for 11, we would have been able to block out 9 of it, take 2, pick up a debuff or 2, but still mostly be okay. And we are not really dependent on Cindra to buy back both of our daggers. It's very unlikely that we're attacking with both daggers in a turn and that we're going to lose both daggers. So even if we get sleep darted, we just alter our play pattern so that we aren't losing 2 daggers. We just lose the 1, and then we can buy it back on a later turn. Something that Ellie mentioned in the stream for Memphis that really stuck with me, I believe it was Ellie, it might have been Sam, is that when you have Flick Knives, you really only need to deal 30 damage to your opponent, because Flick Knives is dealing 1 point every turn. To that effect, I'm a big fan of just flicking for value, even if I'm not going to use Vest, even if I can't buy back the dagger that turn. Now that can cost you against Mistveil heroes who might have Passover available, or cost you on a later turn when you draw not enough draconic attacks, you need to block, but overall I like flicking for value. Now how do we want to sequence this hand? This goes back to our Kadachi FaB days where we have to maximize sequencing for Mask of Momentum triggers, which usually means that we want to put breakpoints on the 3rd link, or in Cindra's case, the 3rd or 4th link when we are actually threatening Mask of Momentum, and we want to put our relevant on hits on chain links 2, 4, 5. Cindra does not have relevant on hits that start a turn, but she does have hot on their heels that we can try to hit with. Now, our hand here is just raw damage. So as far as sequencing goes, the easy line is Ignite, Kunai, Ravenous Rabble, and that puts Azalea into a position where she has to block 4 on the Rabble if she chooses not to block the dagger. If she does block the dagger, that's fine. We could think about flicking the 2nd dagger. We have enough Draconic Links in our hand that we can buy back our daggers this turn. So I think our optimal line here is going to be Ignite, Dagger, Rabble. If the Rabble gets blocked, we flick, play Lava Vein Loyalty. If Lava Vein Loyalty gets blocked, that means that Azalea gave us 2 cards, and we can probably just Arsenal Brand with Cinderclaw. If the Lava Vein Loyalty gets blocked on link 4, then we cannot draw with Mask of Momentum, and we just want a starter in Arsenal to make sure that our next hand doesn't brick. We also have the opportunity to threaten more Mask of Momentum triggers with more cards available. We can go more chain links wide, and that just says that if we get blocked out on link 3, maybe we don't need to flick. We can start the chain over on link 4, and then if we get blocked on link 5, that's when we can flick, and we get 3 blocks out of our opponent instead of just 2. We have no need to Vest here. This is a faster matchup, so I don't necessarily mind that we would use our Vest just for dagger value, right? We don't want to die with 1 stain counter, 1 or 0 stain counters on the Vest. We do want to be getting value from it, and those single points can add up. Because our Inflame got blocked, we just send the dagger, and then we would not have flicked on the Inflame. We don't need to keep it alive. We can kind of just let that go, because we're still going to put Azalea in a position where she needs to potentially block the Lava Vein Loyalty or the Rabble. If she blocks the Rabble, we flick, play Brand, and here we're in a spot where we get to just play Rabble. So if your opponent blocks you on chain link 1, it's pretty unlikely that you're going to flick, though depending on what's in your hand, you may need to. We have 3 Warmonger's Diplomacies in the deck, 56 cards in the deck, and wouldn't you know it, we're still hitting them. But Rabble here for 2 will at least put Azalea into a position where she can't just block with armor, so she's going to give us the draw, and we're snap playing this Warmonger's Diplomacy and arsenaling Brand with Cinderclaw. We're going to call war. Azalea has Take Aim in the arsenal. She does have Half Glove available, but if she Half Gloves without Tunic, then she could play an arrow. She could Half Glove her Take Aim and card it in hand away. I believe she gets to load an arrow. That might not be true. I haven't read Half Glove for a while, but even if she did get to load an arrow, it isn't called red in the ledger, which is literally the only arrow we care about that Azalea can play. Azalea has chosen war, which means that she has chosen to do nothing with her turn. Good news for us, we draw into Shelter from the Storm, which we are happy to put in Arsenal. This hand mostly plays itself. We're going to start with Brand with Cinderclaw for 2 from Arsenal, then Brand for 3, then Blaze Headlong, then Rising Resentment. We want Rising Resentment to come last, in case we draw a 1 cost off the top of our deck with Mask of Momentum, we can arrange our triggers so that momentum resolves first. We draw 1 cost, then we banish it to Rising Resentment's effect. As far as the sequencing here, the reason I wanted to put the 2 in front of the 3 is that the 2 can get blocked by a buff from Azalea's hand, a lace, a pump, and she already has Take Aim in Arsenal. So stopping the buff, blocking with a buff does not really impact her turn the same way that blocking with an arrow does. She is just going to give us the draw, so we're going to fire off this Rabble and then fire off a Resentment and Arsenal, Shelter from the Storm. Finding Wrath of Retribution on top is, fine-ish. Playing it off of a 4-card hand seems less good than playing it off of a 5-card hand, but the only way that, we just can't make that happen. We're going to Arsenal the Shelter, so it's possible that we might look to block with the Shelter, hopefully tank some damage, fire off a 3-card hand without Wrath, and then Arsenal the Wrath and look for 5. Here you see me aggressively using Vest. I like this line. We're going to end with 1 dagger, but we have put Azalea to 18. We know that we are starting to get that Vest value. Possibly losing the dagger is a bad thing here, because if Azalea is keeping 5 cards, I assume that we won't get to. But at the same time, we are just eking out that value where we can. Azalea here, playing the Take Aim, choosing not to reload, loading with Death Dealer, and then throwing out a bunch of pumps on this hamstring shot, though that is going to get changed into a Bolton shot, which I believe attacks for 10 with Go Again Dominate and a reload effect on hit. We can't stop this. We could if we wanted to give up our Mask of Momentum. We really don't want to give up our Mask of Momentum here. But we could definitely think about it if we thought that Azalea was not on Rain Razors and we just wanted to end her turn. We could block with Mask of Momentum, Dragon Scalar Flight Path, a 3 block from hand, and our Shelter from the Storm from Arsenal. It isn't that that's ever a bad play. Depending on life totals, that can be correct. There is enough game left in this game that I'm expecting to be able to threaten Mask of Momentum and have it do more than just win. When your opponent's under 10 life, sometimes the momentum trigger is just kill your opponent, so you don't actually need it around. They are going to block you so they don't die. This isn't one of those situations, but if we had a really good 3-card hand, I might consider it. This 4-card hand is not good. We cannot play Fire Tenant and Oath of Loyalty in the same turn. We cannot play Wrath of Retribution without really jumping through some hoops to make it happen. We could play Oath of Loyalty, pitch Breaking Point to attack with Kunai, use Vest if the Kunai hits to generate a resource to play Wrath of Retribution, then flick the Kunai and Cindra to buy them both back. And yeah, technically that was a line we could take, but it isn't a good one. This hand is just very clunky. So this is a hand where I really want to block out. And if I can hold on to Oath of Loyalty, then I'm happy to do so. So I'm going to take 10 here. I'm not going to block this Bolton shot because I am expecting to be able to block whatever Azalea does next. It won't have Dominate, and that's when I can really just put my hand in front of it. If I can block with my Shelter from the Storm here, I will. What I actively want to do is block with Fire Tenant and Breaking Point, play the Shelter from Arsenal to cover 9, and then play Oath of Loyalty, get in for 4, Arsenal Wrath of Retribution, and set up for a big next turn. But here we have Red in the Ledger will be coming in for 9. So we can still make that play. The question is, do we want to? Do we want to give up a Shelter just to stop damage? We're only going to do one thing on our turn anyway. And saving Shelter from the Storm might get us out of the next Red in the Ledger, where we have more to do on our turn. So in this situation, I am more interested in blocking with Wrath and saving my Shelter than I am in really overblocking here, playing the Oath and then arsenaling the Wrath. I'd rather have the defense reaction, which means that I'm just blocking this for 8 with Wrath, Breaking Point, and Fire Tenant, then throwing Oath of Loyalty, getting in for 4, and passing the turn with that D-React in Arsenal. We have not seen a knock, we have only seen 1 red in the ledger, so there are plenty of ways that Azalea can find red in the ledger. She does have Tunic, so if she can draw into red in her next hand, she gets to load it for effectively free with Tunic and replace it with Death Dealer. So we are in a situation where holding onto this D-React in Arsenal is actively good compared to trying to Arsenal the Wrath and set up for what would be a very cool line if we get the space to do it, but that I'm really not confident that we will have the space to do. So we get to use our 4 cards here for 12 points of value. Not incredible by any stretch of the imagination, but it does keep us at 30 life. We have plenty of runway left to throw a big 4-card turn together that forces Azalea to start blocking with cards she would actively like to play. And if she's going to block this Oath of Loyalty, that's good for me. I'm probably pushing 1 over the top of a 3 block. Or if Azalea takes 4 here and goes to 14, there are plenty of 4-card 14s in my deck if Azalea just can't find a response or disruption. So we throw the Oath. Azalea giving us no blocks here. The 5-card hand is really scary. I don't love it, but it does put us into a position where, we're at 30 life. So we find our second Warmongers, which is good. We also find our third Warmongers, which is a little awkward, considering that if we played a Warmongers and chose War, we wouldn't be able to immediately play out our second Warmongers. Azalea playing Release the Tension here is really bad news for us because we cannot play Shelter from the Storm from Arsenal. We can't play any defense reactions from Arsenal, and Azalea is going to get to keep a 5-card hand. The red in the ledger has dominated. It's definitely going to hit. We could not stop this on hit if we wanted to. I suppose, no, we couldn't. We can block 5 with armor, 8 with a 3 block, 12 with shelter. So we couldn't stop this red in the ledger on hit if we wanted to, which means we aren't even going to try. What we can do is play Warmonger's Diplomacy to trip up Azalea. But here's the thing about Warmonger's Diplomacy. We'll use our 1 action in order to play it. We could choose War. We would have Rising Resentment, Hot on Their Heels, 2 other cards off the top of our deck, and this Shelter in Arsenal. But here's the thing about Cindra. She really wants 5-card hands with 5 attacks to threaten multiple Mask of Momentum triggers in a turn. Having 2 random cards off the top of our deck, which could be defense reactions, and a defense reaction in Arsenal that we cannot currently clear, does not lend to us being a good Cindra deck. It lends to us getting blocked by Azalea and having to deal with a 4-card hand of pumps and arrows. So what we need to do is buy time, and the way that we buy time in this situation is blocking with Hot on Their Heels, taking 11 points of damage, effectively 13 from the Blood Rot, then playing Warmonger's Diplomacy and choosing Peace. We take an intellect penalty because we have to hold the second Warmongers and Rising Resentment. If I could block with Shelter here, that would be fantastic, because I could at least start to get more cards out of my hand. But even though I'm taking a 3-card intellect penalty, I'm holding on to my Shelter, which is going to buy me space. I am holding on to a Rising Resentment, which is a Draconic starter that I need, and I can just kind of tank whatever Azalea is going to do. She'll choose War, use her Half Glove, go down 2 cards in hand. She doesn't have Tunic up to pay for the Death Dealer activation, so she will be playing off of 3 cards, albeit with +4. We take some damage. We play our second Warmongers because we've chosen Peace and can do that. And then Azalea gets gummed up, and that's where we now have a 4-card hand, hopefully with 4 attacks, and we have tempo. Now, we gave up a lot of life to do it. We took 11 from that red in the ledger. We're going to take 2 from this Blood Rot Pox because we're not going to pay the cost. We would have to pitch Warmonger's Diplomacy, which we actively don't want to do. So we are taking damage to make this happen, but we have the Shelter, we have our Dragon Scalar Flight Path, we are roughly in that life total where we could think about blocking with Mask of Momentum and not feel terrible about it. And if we are just getting hit with this Sleep Dart, we don't care because we're not attacking on our turn anyway. It doesn't have Dominate. So what we can do now is block with Burning Blade Dance, Rising Resentment, and our Shelter from the Storm from Arsenal, cover up the 9. If Azalea has Rain Razors, we don't care because we aren't going to activate Azalea. We play our Warmonger's Diplomacy. Number 2, Azalea doesn't have the Half Glove to get out of it. And then we arsenal our brand with Cinderclaw, which is a better Draconic starter than Rising Resentment, because we play Art of Dragon, Blood, and Fire in our deck. So we're covering up the 9. Again, this doesn't matter. This is just us clearing out our arsenal and getting damage prevention. And then we play Warmonger's number 2. At this point, we will choose War. We only have attacks and defense reactions left in our deck, but with Warmongers being our only non-attack action, there is no chance that we brick by calling War and then drawing cards we literally cannot play. So we'll see what Azalea gets us with. She has 5 cards, she has Snapdragons, so depending on what she has available, she could push a bunch of damage, and I believe she has 1 red in the ledger left. So this could very well be an okay turn for her, but without Rain Razors, the red in the ledger is only going to be coming for 5, and that is where we can start looking to cash in our armor to prevent it. Just seeing what we've got from the Azalea without taking my pretty face away. Azalea does call Peace. We draw into 2 defense reactions, so actively not the best turn for us. Azalea is going to get to set up her next hand. Us drawing these 2 defense reactions that we can't use and getting hit with the Frailty, which says that our dagger doesn't deal damage, is about as bad as it can be. I am looking to filter some cards out of my hand, which means that I am going to want to activate Cindra before I need to, before it's free, because I want to pitch this Loyalty. I want to arsenal the Shelter from the Storm. So what my turn looks like here is play Ronin Renegade, play Brand with Cinderclaw, flick Dagger on the Brand chain link, regardless of if it gets blocked or not, deal a point of damage, don't use Vest, then pitch Loyalty to Cindra so that I get both of my daggers back, while also filtering a defense reaction out of my hand, and then attack with Lava Vein Loyalty. So we are pushing 9 points of damage this turn and threatening a momentum trigger. We are putting Azalea down into that life total where Mask of Momentum is just 2 points of block, and we are setting up for our next big turn for when we get disrupted. So we're seeing red in the ledger from Azalea here on defense. This is red in the ledger number 3, which feels really good to get out of Azalea's hand. So at this point, the Shelter here is just 4. I do not care about any other card in Azalea's deck. I guess I care about the other 2 Codex of Frailties that could bring back red in the ledger, but this is where the red is not going to be so big that we can't block it, and we can start looking to maybe cash in some armor. Suppose I was wrong, that was just red number 2. So we do have to deal with another red in the ledger. This one is going to be for 8 with Dominate, but here is where we benefit from our hero playing a bunch of 3 blocks and having just 1 point of armor. This is a situation where Flight Path really is just that much better than Snapdragon Scalars because we don't need to give our Vest. We don't need to give our Flick Knives to cover 8 here. So we're going to have to pitch one of our Draconic Extenders into our Kunai. Unfortunately, we don't have a real starter, and aside from that, we're just picking what is our worst 3 block to block with, because our other one is going to get pitched. So we're probably blocking with Hot on their heels. Our turn is going to look like Pitch Lava Burst, attack with Kunai, play Burning Blade Dance, play Blaze Headlong, and Flick Knives at some point in there. So we are threatening 9 points of damage. If we wanted to vest for a little tempo, we certainly could and deal a 10th point of damage, which is very likely worth it. So here I like blocking with Hot on their heels, Flight Path, and Shelter from the Storm from Arsenal. Our turn is going to be Pitch Lava Burst, attack with Kunai. We will then play Burning Blade Dance. I mean, if the Burning Blade Dance hits, then we'll flick a dagger. We'll get an extra point of value in there and actually be able to threaten lethal with Vest, but we'll see what the turn looks like. I think I do like vesting here, just to make sure that I can attack with Kunai number 2. With Azalea at 10, this is actually lethal. I miscounted how much life she would have. So we get to attack with Kunai number 2. That is going to make our Burning Blade Dance into a mask trigger. I would have liked to sequence this differently and throw the Burning Blade Dance before the Kunai, because now we are stacking on hits, which we really don't want to do. Burning Blade Dance being a Flick Knives and a Mask Momentum trigger just makes it a no-brainer for Azalea to block, whereas if the Burning Blade Dance is link number 2, she might not feel comfortable blocking it. She might want to save her blocks for link 3. So that is not a good decision on my part. We should have sequenced that slightly differently, with the understanding that we could still flick the dagger that we just attacked with and be able to use our floating resource on the dagger that we had not attacked with yet. So we get 2 cards out of Azalea. We put her down to 8. We draw 2 Lava Vein Loyalties at the same time, which is incredible. We are the greatest Flesh and Blood players because now we get to effectively 1 card 6. We're going to block with these 2 loyalties. We are immediately going to banish them on our turn to draw into a 3rd card in hand. We still have a point on Vest, so whatever it is, we're going to be able to play it unless it's a defense reaction. We're really hoping to rip something like an Art of the Dragon Fire off the top, but even another head jab is going to be enough to threaten lethal. So this is where we cash in our Mask of Momentum. At this point, Azalea will never let us draw a card because she has to block us to stay alive. So Mask is just 2 armor at the end of the game. Block with Mask, block with our 2 loyalties, draw a 3rd card, which we can really just play no matter what, because unless Azalea has damage prevention, she cannot stop us from Flick Knivesing and then using our last Stain counter to play whatever's off the top. I don't know why I'm checking the graveyard. This is a very easy decision to... I mean, I guess we could take 8, which doesn't make sense. We have to pitch one of our loyalties to attack with a starter. It's a bad line, so block with both our loyalties here, trade in the Mask. Azalea still has enough life that Flick Knives is just going to be lethal. We never want to give up Flick Knives. It's the last card we want to give up. So at this point, we can threaten 3, 6, 9, 10 points of damage just on board. We also can use our last Stains counter if we wanted to activate Cindra after we flick to buy back both of our daggers and then attack with a 2nd dagger or attack with one of those 2. It really depends on how much damage Azalea takes here. If she takes 3 from this Lava Vein Loyalty, and if she takes 3 from this Brand with Cinderclaw, Flick Knives would put her to 1, and an extra dagger gets her Tunic. I'm not expecting her to be able to attack, to be able to use the Tunic again this game, but it is just a point of armor that she needs to give us, and it reduces her runway. It gives her a lot less space to maybe block with 3 cards and then Tunic, load a 0-cost arrow, rip a buff off the top of the deck, and be able to come in for 7 that we can't interact with, or that we don't want to interact with. So I really like this play, just putting Azalea into this position that she doesn't get to Tunic, and we get to just try to end the game. Now the hand we've drawn to end the game is kind of bad. Really, it doesn't matter. If Azalea doesn't have damage prevention, then any attack plus Flick Knives is lethal. The dagger will kill her. But we can at least think about the best way to deal with this turn cycle from her. By which I mean, we cannot play Ancestral Empowerment targeting Oath of Loyalty. We can play it targeting Art of Dragon Blood. So if we were going to block with a single card here, it would be Art of Dragon Blood. And that said, Azalea does still have Snapdragon Scalers. This could potentially be a Codex line, so maybe we don't want to block. I ultimately don't think it matters. We can block with the blood here. If Azalea snaps, finds a way to reload an arrow, and then attacks again, we still have our Oath of Loyalty that we can block with. We can block with Ancestral Empowerment if we really needed to. We just need to be able to attack with something. So we do get the snap out of Azalea. Plays a Codex of Blood Rot. That is going to give us a Blood Rot. Is going to give Azalea a Ponder and is going to let her load this arrow for free. She has no floating resources. There is literally nothing she can do to us that we care about. So we will just load Art of the Dragon Body, the one card that we need to attack with no matter what. And we've got a Codex of Frailty play here, so generating a second Ponder, giving us a Frailty, which again, not only doesn't matter because our win con is Flick Knives, but actively helps us because Art of Dragon Blood, as a 4-power attack, might have been blocked by a 2 and a 3 or 2 3s, in which case Ancestral Empowerment is not lethal, but Art of Dragon Blood for 3 maybe gets blocked by a single arrow, a single 3 block, and now Ancestral Empowerment does win the game if Azalea happens to have some sort of damage prevention. By which I mean, we attack with Art of Dragon Blood, we play Ancestral Empowerment, get it up to 4, she discards Shelter from the Storm. We could react to the Shelter with Flick Knives, which means that using it there was actually a mistake, but ultimately does not matter. So that was a fairly one-sided game. I wanted to show it for a few reasons. One being, this deck is just really good, and I want to help everyone get reps with it. I think it's just a strong deck. I like showing it off. 2, there are some sequencing intricacies that come from playing Draconic Ninja with Mask of Momentum. You look at Draconic Ninja and say, brain dead, aggro deck, and 80% of the time that's true. The other 20% is how do you sequence to optimize Mask of Momentum, and how do you block? Because if you can't do either of those things, if you're just putting your hand on the table every turn, then you will lose games that you could otherwise be winning. And even here we saw some slight optimization mistakes that didn't necessarily cost us in this game, but might have cost us in a different game. 3rd, the children yearn for the content. So here I am playing the hot new deck, Redline Cindra. I hope you enjoyed watching me play the hot new deck. I hope you learned something from it. If so, be sure to head jab that like button. My comments are always open for any questions or feedback. If you haven't already done so, be sure to subscribe to my channel. It's the best free way to support me and to make sure that you see daily FaB gameplay in your YouTube feed. I have a Blue Sky, a Patreon, and a Discord, all of which can be found in the video description below. Patrons at the Arc Lightning tier will get all of my sideboard guides for all of my deck lists forever, including Cindra. I will be back tomorrow with more daily FaB gameplay, and until then, take care.